I bought this ranch to get away from people. No neighbors, no traffic, no HOA. Just me. 140 acres of open Colorado land. And enough silence to hear my own boots in the dirt. 3 weeks after I closed on it, I opened my mailbox and found a bill for $247,000. Past due HOA fees. And that's when my stomach dropped. Because if that debt was real, there should have been a lien on this land before I ever bought it. There wasn't. Which meant only one thing. Somebody had created that debt after I moved in. And somehow they'd attached it to my ranch. That's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. I didn't buy that place because it was pretty, though it was. Lord knows it was. The ranch sat 30 miles outside of Cedar Ridge, where the pavement gave up, and the gravel roads started looking like scars across the hills. Rolling pasture, dry creek beds, old cottonwoods bending in the wind, a weathered red barn, and a little white ranch house that leaned just enough to tell you it had survived things. It felt honest. That mattered to me. After 32 years working federal land fraud investigations, I'd spent enough time in offices, courtrooms, and county basements digging through lies. Retirement was supposed to be simpler. Coffee on the porch fence repairs, maybe a few horses, maybe peace. I paid cash. Everything I had. No mortgage, no debt, no strings. I read every page before I signed. That's habit. When you've spent your life chasing fraud, you stop trusting summaries. You trust paper. The deed was clean. Title was clean. No easements, no liens, no HOA, covenants, nothing. That mattered. Because I specifically asked twice. The title officer, a young guy named Preston, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Mr. Boone, this property is completely outside any HOA jurisdiction." I remember smiling. That was the best sentence I'd heard in years. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, I walked down the dirt path to the mailbox with my coffee sun, barely up air, cool enough to bite the kind of quiet you pay for. There was only one envelope inside, bright red thick paper, my name typed clean across the front, no stamp hand-delivered. That bothered me first. Then I opened it. Final demand, Pine Ridge Estates, Homeowners Association, balance due $247,891.63. I read it 3 times, line by line: road, maintenance wildfire, mitigation, emergency water, bond, private security levy, special community access assessment, 9 years of unpaid obligations, 9 years. I hadn't even owned the place for 23 days. At the bottom, in bold, failure to remit payment within 14 days will result in immediate foreclosure proceedings. I laughed at first because it was absurd. Then I stopped laughing because absurd doesn't mean harmless, not when it's written on paper. I looked out across my pasture, the morning sun stretching over the fence line. Everything looked peaceful, but after 32 years in fraud investigations, I knew something most folks don't. The dangerous scams are never loud in the beginning. They arrive quietly in envelopes, and something about this one felt practiced, like I wasn't the first person they'd done it to. I folded the letter slowly and slipped it back into the envelope. Then I looked at the line that mattered most, past due obligations attached to the property, not me the property. That was when the math clicked in my head. If this debt was real, it would have been sitting on that title long before I signed, but it wasn't, which meant somebody had just rewritten the history of my land, and I intended to find out who. I didn't call the HOA first. That's what most people would do, call the number, argue demand answers. But after 32 years working fraud, I learned something important. You never call the liar first, you call the paperwork. So, I went back inside, set the red envelope on my kitchen table, and pulled out my closing binder. Every page, every signature, every survey, everything from the sale. I read it all again, slow the way I always did. Outside, the wind pushed against the porch screen, making that soft, rattling sound old houses make when they're warning you. The deed was clean warranty deed, recorded properly, no liens, no covenants, no assessments, nothing attached. I checked the title commitment, same thing. Schedule. A schedule, B, exceptions, restrictions, nothing. No HOA, not even a whisper of one. That's when I called the title company. Preston answered on the 3rd ring. His voice sounded younger than I remembered, nervous, like he already knew why I was calling. "Mr. Boone." I leaned back in my chair. "Preston, I got a bill from Pine Ridge Estates, HOA, this morning, $250,000. Silence. Then, that doesn't make sense. No, I said it doesn't. I could hear keyboard clicks fast, then slower. Then he stopped. Well, he said carefully, I'm looking at the title file right now. At closing, there was absolutely no HOA claim on that parcel. At closing. That wording caught my ear. I sat up. What do you mean at closing? More silence. Longer this time then. Mr. Boone, there's something here now. I felt my jaw tighten. What kind of something? He cleared his throat. A supplemental covenant filing. My eyes narrowed. Dated when another pause, 6 days after your closing. That made my stomach go cold, because there it was. The trick. Not old debt, new paperwork, pretending to be old debt. When was it entered into the county system? Preston hesitated. Looks like same day. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at my land, the creek cutting through the north pasture, the fence line, the barn, mine, still mine, but somebody was moving paper around it quietly, like termites in the walls. Who approved it? I asked. Preston lowered his voice. County Recorder's Office, Nolan Briggs. That name meant nothing to me. Yet. Title insurance cover it. That answer came fast. Too fast. No, sir. I closed my eyes. Why not? Because the filing occurred after transfer. It wasn't present during title examination. In other words, not their problem. Convenient. So, somebody waited until I signed, I said. Preston didn't answer. Didn't need to. That silence confirmed it. They'd let the sale close clean. Then they dropped the trap. I thanked him, hung up, and sat there staring at the red envelope. That's when I noticed something else. The document ID on the HOA notice matched the supplemental covenant filing. Same number, same day. Meaning they'd printed my debt notice the moment the county recorded it. This wasn't random. It was coordinated, precise, planned. And then I heard tires on gravel. I stepped outside. Black Range Rover, brand new, polished like glass. It rolled slowly up my drive like it belonged there. A woman stepped out. Mid-50s, sharp face, white blazer, sunglasses, perfect posture. The kind of person who never apologized because she'd never had to. She walked up to my porch like she was inspecting a property, not visiting one. You must be Elias Boone. Her smile was polished cold. I didn't smile back. And you are, she took off her glasses, Veronica Hale. Blue eyes, hard eyes, president of Pine Ridge Estates. Of course. I folded my arms. So... Her gaze drifted over my ranch, not admiring, measuring like a buyer checking square footage. Then she looked at me and said, most people just settle. That sentence landed heavier than the debt itself. Not, there's been a mistake. Not, let's work this out. No, most people just settle, meaning she'd done this before. I stepped closer. How many? She smiled slightly. I'm sorry. How many people folded? Her smile faded just a little. Then she said, you should be careful, Mr. Boone. Legal matters have a way of becoming expensive. I laughed small dry. Lady, I said, I spent 32 years proving intent. Her eyes narrowed first crack. She hadn't expected that. She turned, walked back to her SUV, and before getting in, said 14 days. Then she drove off. I stood there in the dust, watching the black Rover disappear over the hill. And for the first time since I bought that ranch, I stopped feeling like a homeowner and started feeling like evidence. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was scared, because my mind kept running numbers, dates, filing, sequences, patterns. That's what fraud work does to you. After enough years, your brain stops looking at paper like paper. It starts seeing motive. And Veronica Hale had just shown me hers. Most people just settle. That line kept turning over in my head, not most people fight. Not most people ask questions. Most people settle. Meaning, this wasn't her first time. By sunrise, I was already in my truck. The county records office opened at 8 o'clock. I got there at 7:30. East Coyote County wasn't much to look at. One courthouse, one diner, one gas station, and a records office that smelled like dust, stale coffee and old carpet. Places like that don't change much. That's why people trust them. And that's exactly why corruption hides there so well. Inside, a woman at the front desk looked up over her glasses. You need something, property records. She slid me a visitor log. Parcel number, owner name, reason. I wrote verification. She pointed toward the archive terminals. I sat down and pulled up my parcel. First thing I checked was the supplemental covenant filed 6 days after closing, approved by Nolan Briggs, backdated 12 years. That alone was dirty, but dirty paperwork always has a history. So I started digging. Board minutes, HOA, resolutions, annexation, filings, assessment, schedules, everything. That's when I found it. A file titled Pine Ridge Expansion Resolution 2014. That made my stomach tighten because according to this file, my ranch had been absorbed into Pine Ridge 12 years ago. I opened it. 43 pages, meeting transcripts, voting approvals, boundary maps, fee schedules, then the signature page. Consent of adjacent owner, signed Harold Whitaker. I stared at it because Harold Whitaker never sold me that ranch. His son did. Harold had died 10 years ago. I knew that because I'd read the probate transfer myself. Harold died March 2013. This document was signed February 2014, 11 months after he was buried. I leaned back, heart steady, mind sharper. That was the moment the whole thing changed. Sloppy people make mistakes. Fraudsters manufacture certainty. Nobody accidentally notarizes a dead man. I printed everything, all 43 pages, took them to the clerk, young guy, maybe 25, thin frame, nervous hands. He looked over the documents. You need certified copies, need metadata. He frowned. Metadata. Upload history, user credentials. He shifted. We don't usually release internal logs. I stepped closer, tapped one finger against the counter, slow once, didn't blink. Son, I said quietly, I spent 32 years in federal fraud. If these records are dirty, you don't want your name anywhere near them. That did it. His shoulders dropped. He looked around first, then clicked through the back end. File history, upload source, user credentials, time stamps, and there it was. All 43 documents uploaded together. Same day, same hour, same terminal. User N. Briggs. Nolan Briggs. I felt my jaw tighten. Not in 2014, 3 weeks ago. The same week I bought the ranch, not historical records, freshly planted, a fake past, built all at once. That's when something clicked. I remembered Preston's voice from yesterday. That hesitation, that careful wording. At closing, not surprise recognition, like he'd seen something and knew better than to say it. Maybe Preston wasn't part of it, but he knew enough to stay careful, which meant Briggs wasn't operating in the dark. People were seeing pieces of this and staying quiet. The clerk swallowed, then pointed at another tab. That's strange. I looked up. What mail records? 12 official notices, 9 years, delinquency warnings, violation, notices, foreclosure threats, every one of them marked delivered. I checked the destination lot, 9 Pine Hollow route. That wasn't my address, wasn't Harold's either. It was an abandoned rural mailbox route, retired 8 years ago. Fake notices sent to nowhere, built only to create legal cover. That was the beauty of it and the poison. Build fake debt, build fake notice history, build fake annexation, then spring it on the new owner. Paper first. Pressure, second land, last. I looked at the clerk who verifies this upload history. He looked nervous. Briggs, of course, the fox guarding the paperwork. I gathered my copies and stepped outside, sat on the courthouse steps, spread them across my lap. 32 years chasing fraud, and this one was cleaner than most. Not because it was smarter, because it was local. Local fraud is dangerous. People trust county stamps, they trust seals, they trust process. That's how you bury theft in paperwork. My phone rang, unknown number. I answered. Veronica. Smooth voice, controlled. Mr. Boone, have you had time to reconsider? I looked down at Harold Whitaker's dead signature. You got a dead man signing legal documents, Veronica. Silence one, beat then, clerical errors happen. I laughed, small, cold. A dead man, a clerical error. That your defense? Her voice hardened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. There it was again. Pressure, not denial, never denial. I said, you built this whole thing after I'd bought the ranch. Her answer came fast. Prove it. Then she hung up. I stared at the phone, and that's when I understood something. Veronica wasn't nervous because paper wasn't her real weapon. Paper was just the beginning. People like her always escalate, and whatever came next wasn't staying on paper. I got home just before dark. The sun was low, throwing long shadows across the pasture. That kind of golden light that makes everything look peaceful. But I knew better. Peace can lie. I laid the county records across my kitchen table. Harold Whitaker's dead signature, Briggs upload logs, fake notices, fake annexation. It was all there enough to prove fraud. But proving fraud and stopping it were two different things. I poured myself coffee and sat on the porch. Didn't touch dinner, didn't turn on the television, just watched the fence line. That's something old investigators learn. When pressure fails, escalation follows. Veronica wasn't done. She'd only started. Around midnight, the dog started barking. Not random barking hard, barking sharp, focused. That woke something old in me. I grabbed the flashlight by the door, then the 12 gauge. Not because I wanted trouble, because out here, trouble rarely announces itself. By the time I stepped onto the porch, I heard it. Diesel engines, low heavy coming from the north pasture. That was wrong. Nobody should have been out there. I killed the porch light and moved through the dark, slow boots, quiet in dry grass. The flashlight stayed off. Moonlight was enough. Then I saw them. 3 trucks, 2 flatbeds, 1 excavator. Work lights blasting white across my fence line. And men, 6 of them, moving posts, pulling wire, driving fresh stakes. At first my brain refused it, because it was too bold, too stupid. Then I saw the paint, bright orange survey marks 10 feet inside my land. They weren't just trespassing. They were physically moving my boundary, rewriting the land the same way they'd rewritten the paperwork. That's when I stepped into the light, shut it down. Everything stopped. Engines' voices, metal clanging. One man turned, hard hat, clipboard. He looked annoyed, like I was interrupting his day. "Private HOA property expansion," he said. I laughed, standing there in my own pasture with my shotgun in hand under my own stars, and some stranger telling me my land belonged to an HOA. "That fence has stood here since 1971, I said. He shrugged. "New survey." I looked at the orange paint, fresh, wet, fake. Then headlights appeared, black Range Rover Veronica. Of course. She stepped out wearing boots this time, expensive ones. White coat, hair tied back, like she came prepared for dirt, but not for work. She looked at the excavator, then at me, calm, always calm. "This could have stayed civil, Mr. Boone." I looked at her. "You forged county records," she smiled. "You can argue that in court." Then she pointed at the stakes. "These are the new boundary lines." That was the first time anger hit me. Real anger, not because of the money, because of the arrogance. They weren't waiting for law anymore. They were creating facts on the ground. That's how land theft works. Paper first, possession second. I pumped the shotgun once. The sound cut through the pasture like lightning. Nobody moved, not Veronica, not the workers, but everyone froze. "You put one more shovel in my dirt," I said, "and this becomes criminal trespass." Veronica didn't flinch. She looked at one of her men. He kept working. That was deliberate, a test. She wanted to see if I'd crack, so I called the sheriff. Speakerphone put it on. 23 minutes later, Deputy Mason arrived. Same county, same dust-covered SUV, middle-aged, square jaw, tired eyes. He walked the line, looked at the posts, looked at Veronica, then at me. "What's going on here?" I handed him the papers, dead owner's signature, fake filings, everything. He barely glanced. Veronica stepped in, smooth. "These are legal boundary corrections." Correction, funny word for theft. Mason sighed. "This sounds civil." There it was, same line. Always the same line. I stepped closer. "They're moving my fence." He looked at the stakes, then said, "Based on current county records, this may fall under disputed jurisdiction." That word hit me. Current, not original. Current meaning Briggs' paperwork had already poisoned the system. Then I saw it. Mason's phone buzzed. He checked it, looked at Veronica. Very slight nod, tiny but enough. That was all I needed. He was getting instructions. Maybe not dirty, but influenced. That's how local corruption breathes, not through orders, through favors. Mason looked at me. "I suggest you let the court settle this." Then he left, just like that. Left my land half redrawn. Veronica smiled, small, victorious. She stepped close enough for me to smell perfume under diesel smoke. "You're running out of time." Then she got back in the Rover, The workers packed up, but they left the new stakes bright orange, crooked wrong, like scars across my pasture. By the time the engines faded, the land was quiet again, but it wasn't my quiet anymore. I stood there with the shotgun hanging at my side, staring at those false lines in the dirt, and I understood something. Paper had gotten them inside my records. Tonight they'd taken their first steps inside my land, and if I didn't stop them fast next time, they wouldn't stop at the fence. I didn't sleep at all after that. Hard to sleep when somebody redraws your land while you're standing on it. By sunrise, I was back in the north pasture, coffee in one hand, county plats in the other, and those orange stakes still standing there like insults bright crooked wrong. The dogs stayed close. Duke and Miller, both old cattle dogs, both smart enough to feel tension before people do. I stood over the fake survey line and compared it against my original plat, 10 feet inward across nearly half a mile. Didn't sound like much until you did the math. That was almost 7 acres. 7 acres stolen one stake at a time. That's how land theft happens, not all at once. In inches. I knelt and touched the dirt around the nearest orange marker. Fresh tracks. Then I heard tires behind me. Old engine heavy. A rusted Ford, LF25. O rolled through the gate. The driver looked older than the truck. Late 70s, maybe 80. Gray beard, sunburned, skin hat, darkened by years of sweat. He shut off the engine and stared at the orange stakes. Didn't speak for a while, then spit in the dirt. Well, that ain't right. I stood. You know this line. He nodded. Better than most. He stepped out slow. Bad knee stiff, like every joint had weather in it. Walter Griggs. That name clicked. Harold Whitaker's old foreman. The son had mentioned him during closing. 40 years on this land. Walter looked over the stakes again, then at me. Harold always said if Pine Ridge ever came sniffing, they'd try moving the line. That caught me. He expected this. Walter nodded. Developers came once back in '94. Harold never trusted them. I folded my arms. What stopped them? Walter smiled. Harold trusted dirt more than paper. That line sat there. Heavy. I asked, "What's that mean?" Walter tapped his boot against the ground. Means Harold buried the truth. That got my attention. Back in '71, before all the digital records and county scans, original survey crews placed brass monument pins, official county markers, stamped, driven deep permanent. Walter said Harold never trusted later resurveys, thought developers paid for friendly measurements. So he made sure nobody ever lost the original line. He memorized every marker, every corner, every break. Where? Walter pointed toward the ridge. Under this line, that was enough for me. By noon, I drove into Cedar Ridge and bought a commercial-grade metal detector. Walter laughed when I brought it back. Fancy? Fraud pays, I said. We waited until dark, less heat, less visibility. And if Veronica was watching, I didn't want her knowing what we were after. The pasture was dead quiet wind moving through dry grass crickets, humming coyotes somewhere far off. Walter carried an old lantern. I carried the detector. Back and forth, soft electric hum, like mowing invisible grass. Hours passed, nothing. Old nails, rust wire, beer cans. Then, beep, sharp clean, not junk. We froze. Walter looked at me. That's one. I knelt, started digging. Careful. 6 inches, 10 inches still. At 14 inches solid round. I brushed the dirt away. Brass thick heavy, still seated in the earth, still exactly where the county had placed it. Stamped East Coyote, County. 1971. Walter smiled. There she is. My chest tightened because there it was. Not theory, not memory, truth, buried under 40 years of dirt. And I didn't touch it, didn't lift it, didn't even lean on it, because in land fraud position is everything. The marker only mattered where it sat. Move it, and it became just metal. I pulled out my phone, switched on GPS video, timestamp running coordinates locked. I filmed everything, the marker, its depth, its orientation, Walter holding the lantern, the county stamp. Then I pulled out my laser measure, ran it from the brass marker to Veronica's orange stake, 10 feet 3 inches exactly. I filmed that too. Walter stood over me and said, "That marker's older than her whole HOA. I made sure the camera caught that. Witness location proof. Then we walked east 200 yards, second sweep, second hit, second marker, same depth, same stamp, same alignment, perfectly straight, perfectly legal. The real line. Veronica's fake stakes were wrong, every one of them. I recorded it all too, original county markers, still in place, still untouched, stronger than anything Briggs had typed into a computer. When we were done, Walter helped me cover them, back up same dirt, same depth, same concealment, hidden again, protected, because now they mattered more, buried than exposed. Walter leaned on his shovel. You got enough? I looked out over the dark pasture. Enough to break them. Walter nodded, then said, Careful. I looked up. Why? He stared into the dark. Folks stealing land don't stop because they're wrong. That stayed with me because he was right. People like Veronica don't back down when caught. They escalate. As we walked back toward the house, Duke stopped, growled low, mean warning. I turned. At the ridge, headlights parked far beyond the fence, watching didn't move, didn't leave, just sat there. Walter saw them too, said quietly, They know. I stared at those lights, engine off, silent, patient. Whoever was up there, they weren't there by accident. And suddenly those buried markers felt heavier than brass, because now I had something stronger than their paperwork. And people like Veronica Hale don't let evidence stay alive for long. I didn't go back inside that night, not after the headlights, not after Walter said, They know. I sat on the porch until sunrise, shotgun across my lap, coffee gone cold watching that ridge. Nobody came down. But the message was clear. They were watching, and that meant one thing. The brass markers mattered a lot. By morning I knew what I had, proof, real proof. But proof only tells you what happened. It doesn't tell you why. And in fraud work, motive is everything always. So I started asking the question I should have asked first. Why my land? Not why the dead. Not why the fake filings. Why this ranch? Because nobody builds this much paperwork for 7 acres, not unless the ground underneath is worth far more. By 10 o'clock that morning, I was back in Cedar Ridge, not at the county office at the planning department. Same county building, different floor, more polished, cleaner carpets, same smell of coffee and bureaucracy. I asked for development filings around Pine Ridge Estates. The woman at the desk smiled too fast. Those aren't public yet. That word hit me, yet meaning something was coming. I slid my business card across the desk. Old card, Federal Land Fraud Division, retired, still useful. Her smile faded. She checked the card, then checked me. 5 minutes later, she returned with a file, unofficial, not stamped, not final, but enough. I opened it, and there it was. Pine Ridge Phase 4, expansion, 400 homes, private roads, community lake, golf, lots, security gate, luxury subdivision, projected value, $96 million. I kept reading. Water source, North Creek Basin, my creek. Road easement, Western Ridge, access my road. I sat there for a long moment. That's when it clicked. Not 7 acres, not even my whole ranch control. That's what they needed. Without my land, Phase 4 dies. No water, no road, no permits, no development, no money. That's why Veronica was calm. That's why Briggs backdated everything. That's why the debt was so high. $250,000 wasn't random, it was pressure. Enough to make an old man panic. Enough to force a sale. Enough to make someone fold. And then I saw it. A purchase contingency hidden deep. Buyer of distressed parcel, Redstone Holdings, LLC. I knew that trick. Shell company, developer front. I wrote it down. That's when a voice behind me said, You found it? I turned. Walter, hat low, hands in pockets. Didn't look surprised. You knew Walter nodded. Harold figured it out before he died. That hit me. You telling me he knew they'd come back? Walter looked out the courthouse window. Harold fought Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. I stared at him. Why didn't anybody tell me? Walter gave me a tired look. Would you have bought it? That answer sat there. Hard. Maybe not. Walter stepped closer. Developers been circling that creek for 20 years. He tapped the file. That water's everything. He was right. In Colorado, water rights are worth more than fences, more than dirt, sometimes more than the house. And my creek fed the entire northern basin. Veronica didn't want my ranch. She wanted access, permanent legal profitable. That changed everything. Because now the motive was clean. Big enough for fraud, big enough for bribery, big enough for violence. I drove home with copies of everything. Map site plans, ownership structures, shell company filings, and halfway home I pulled over, called Preston. He answered, fast, too fast. Mr. Boone, you knew. Silence, long silence. Then, knew what? I stared at the steering wheel, the Phase 4 expansion. He exhaled, small, tired. That wasn't in our closing file. That's not what I asked. Another pause. Then, I knew developers had been asking about that parcel. That was enough. Not dirty, but informed. He knew interest was high. He just didn't know why. Or maybe he didn't want to. That's how decent people survive bad systems. They stop asking one question too early. I hung up, kept driving. By the time I got home, the sun was dropping, long shadows over the pasture, and then I saw it. Another orange stake. Closer. 50 yards from my barn. That wasn't there this morning. I got out, walked to it. Tied to the top, a white paper tag. Printed clean, final pre-foreclosure notice. I stared at it, and that's when I understood. They weren't waiting for the courts. They were speeding up because now they knew I'd found the truth. And people with $96 million on the line don't slow down. They get desperate. I stood there staring at that white tag tied to the orange stake. Final pre-foreclosure notice. Clean print county style formatting. Official enough to scare anyone who didn't know better. But now I knew better. This wasn't law. It was pressure. And pressure means urgency. I tore it off and read the details. Emergency foreclosure hearing. 72 hours. Fast-tracked under community debt enforcement. That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was bold. They'd spent weeks manufacturing 12 years of fake history, and now they wanted the land in 3 days. That told me everything. They were accelerating because they knew I'd found something, and desperate people make mistakes. But desperate people can still win. I went inside and called the only person left who hadn't lied to me. Yet attorney Claire Dugan Land, use litigator out of Denver. Walter gave me her name, said she once shut down a mining company over forged water rights. That was enough for me. She answered on the second ring. I kept it simple. HOA, fraud fake annexation emergency foreclosure, silence, then how bad, $250,000 bad. She whistled. Email me everything. By midnight, I'd sent fake filings, dead owner signature Briggs metadata logs, GPS stamped brass marker videos, Phase 4 development plans, shell company records. 20 minutes later, she called back. First thing she said, "This isn't just foreclosure fraud." I leaned back. "What is it? Predatory acquisition." That phrase landed hard, legal, precise, ugly. She explained it clean. Manufactured debt, force default acquire land below market, hide the beneficiary behind shell companies. Classic, only sloppier. "They're betting you'll panic," she said. "They're late." That got a laugh out of her. Then she got serious. "Listen carefully. We need an injunction before that hearing. How fast?" "Tomorrow." That part worried me, not because of time, because of Briggs. If county records were dirty, court filings could already be leaning. Claire must have heard it in my silence. "Paper can be manipulated," she said. "Judges hate physical evidence." That made me think of the buried brass markers still in the dirt, still waiting. "Real good," I said. I got dirt. The next morning, Claire drove out black pickup mud on the tires. No nonsense late 40s, sharp eyes work boots. The kind of lawyer who looked like she'd win arguments in parking lots before courtrooms. She spread everything across my kitchen table red. Every page asked hard questions, didn't waste time. That's how you know someone's good. Then she stopped at the Phase 4, map tapped the creek, tapped my access road. "There." I nodded. "The choke points." She looked at me. "Your ranch isn't worth $12 million because of acreage." "Water," I said. "Access," she corrected. "That mattered because in court control beats size." Then she looked up. "Do you know what they're really doing?" I already did, but I wanted to hear it. "They're not collecting debt." She tapped the foreclosure notice. "They're forcing a distressed sale." I stared at it. She kept going. "At auction, Redstone Holdings buys it." The shell company, same conclusion. That's when Duke started barking hard outside. Claire and I froze. She moved to the window, 3 trucks parked at the gate, construction trucks. No logos, no plates, just sitting there watching. Claire looked at me. That normal gnome. One man stepped out, walked to the gate, nailed something to the post, then left. Didn't knock, didn't speak, just made sure we saw it. By the time I got there, the trucks were gone. A yellow notice, auction notice. Property subject to liquidation, pending hearing. Claire read it twice, then looked at me. They're trying to establish possession before judgment. I looked at the paper. They can do that? Not legally. That word mattered. Not legally, but money buys momentum, pressure, confusion. That's how people steal land, not by proving ownership, by acting like they already have it. Claire packed her files. We file first thing. Then she looked me dead in the eye. If we lose the injunction tomorrow, she didn't finish. Didn't have to. Auction, Redstone buys, Veronica wins, my land gone, creek gone, road gone, truth buried. That evening, I walked out into the pasture, sun low, orange light over the hills, the fake stakes still standing, the real markers buried below. Funny thing about land, the truth stays underground, the lie stands in plain sight. That's America sometimes. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, Veronica. Old habit kicked in before I answered. I tapped record. Colorado only needed one person to know a conversation was being preserved. And I'd spent too many years learning never to trust a confession unless it survived playback. I answered. Her voice was calm, almost amused. You should take the deal. What deal? 200,000. I stopped walking. She continued. You walk away now, and this all disappears. There it was. Not debt collection, a buyout, cheap, dirty, and recorded. I looked out across my pasture. You're offering me less than the debt you claim I owe. Silence. Just long enough. Then that depends how expensive tomorrow gets. That was better. Threat plus leverage. Also recorded. I smiled. You're nervous. Her voice hardened. 72 hours, Mr. Boone. Click. I lowered the phone, stopped the recording, saved the file, backed it up. Twice. And standing there in the dark, I realized something. This wasn't just about beating Veronica anymore. It was about surviving long enough to prove what she was willing to do. Because if Veronica Hale was making private offers now, it meant she was scared, and scared people do dangerous things. I barely slept that night, not because of the foreclosure, not because of Veronica, because of that phone call. I kept replaying it. 200,000, walk away. That wasn't debt collection, that was desperation. And desperate people don't lose quietly, they lash out. By dawn, Claire was already filing the injunction. Fast, aggressive. She said if we could freeze the foreclosure before the hearing, it would buy us time. I needed that because now I had evidence, real evidence. But evidence only matters if you stay alive long enough to use it. That morning felt wrong, too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your skin. Duke and Miller stayed close, wouldn't leave the porch. That bothered me. Animals know, they always know. Around noon, Walter stopped by, brought coffee, sat beside me, didn't say much, just watched the ridge. Finally he said, "You ever notice how folks get dangerous right before they lose?" I looked at him. Every time. He nodded like that was enough. By sunset, Claire called. We're on the docket tomorrow. That was good, but her voice was tight. What? She paused. Briggs filed supplemental evidence. I felt my jaw tighten. What evidence? Claims the county re-verified the annexation this morning. I laughed cold. Briggs was doubling down. That meant one thing. He knew we were close. Night fell hard. No moon, wind picking up. The kind that makes old barns groan. I sat in the living room, lights low, papers spread out, recorder on the table. Veronica's call backed up 3 times. Phone, laptop, flash drive, old habits, chain of custody matters. Around 11, Duke snapped up, growled low deep. Miller was already on his feet, both staring at the barn. Then I smelled it. Gasoline, strong, fresh. Before I could move, both dogs bolted, fast straight for the barn. Protective instinct, same as always. They'd smelled it or smelled whoever had been there. Then fire. A sudden burst of orange along the barn wall, then another, then the whole side went up fast, too fast. Accelerant. My stomach dropped. Duke, Miller, both dogs disappeared inside. I heard barking wild, furious, then choking. That sound hit something deep in me. Walter shouted from the porch, "Elias!" But I was already running. The hose wouldn't do a damn thing. Fire was climbing too fast. I hit the barn doors. One side jammed, smoke pouring black heat like an oven. Inside, I heard Duke barking hoarse now, then Miller scratching frantic. A beam had dropped across the side exit, trapped them. I wrapped my shirt over my mouth and went in. Inside felt like hell hot, blind loud wood snapping overhead. Smoke thick enough to chew. I saw Duke first pinned behind fallen timber, still fighting, still trying to get to me. Miller was beside him, coughing weak. I grabbed the beam too hot, burned my hands, pulled. Anyway, didn't move. Pulled again. Nothing. Then I braced and shoved with my shoulder. The timber shifted just enough. Duke lunged out first, then Miller. Both stumbled past me toward the door. I turned and the roof groaned. That sound deep final. Walter grabbed me by the arm just as I came out, pulled me clear. We hit the dirt hard. 10 seconds later, the whole front wall collapsed. Fire lit the pasture orange. Duke collapsed beside me, coughing. Miller shaking so hard his legs gave out. I grabbed both of them, held on. Sirens came 20 minutes later, too late, way too late. Deputy Mason, same face, same dust. He stared at the flames. Looks electrical. I stood up, covered in soot, hands burned. There's no power in that barn. He looked at me, didn't answer. Walter didn't either, because we all knew this wasn't accidental. Then I saw it near the back fence, half hidden in weeds. Red gas can dropped in a hurry. Beside it, a construction glove, same brand, same type I'd seen on Veronica's crew. I didn't touch either, just filmed timestamp, GPS evidence. Mason saw me. "What are you doing?" "Your job." He said nothing. That silence said enough. Then Walter called out, "Tire tracks, fresh heavy tread truck. No plates, same pattern as the gate, same pattern as yesterday." Claire arrived just after midnight. Looked at the barn, looked at the gas can, looked at my hands, then at the dogs. This changes everything. She was right. Fraud was one thing, arson was another. Attempted murder, different game, different penalties. Then my phone buzzed, unknown number, text only cell, or next time we don't miss. Claire read it, Walter read it. Nobody spoke because now we all understood. This wasn't about land anymore, not just land. This was about removing resistance. Claire looked at me. They just made this criminal. I looked at the burning skeleton of my barn, Duke and Miller shaking beside me, smoke rising into the black sky. And for the first time since this started, I realized Veronica Hale wasn't trying to scare me anymore. She was trying to break me. And people who burn your home to win usually burn themselves next. By morning, the barn was still smoking. Not flames, just that gray, bitter smoke that hangs in the air after something important dies. Duke and Miller stayed on the porch, wrapped in blankets, breathing rough alive. That was enough for me, barely. Claire had already called the state fire marshal, not county, not Mason State. Because after last night, I trusted local law about as far as I could throw it. The injunction hearing was in 4 hours. Claire wanted me focused, but my phone buzzed before sunrise. Unknown number text. Only need to talk. I can prove everything. Meet alone. County Fairgrounds, South Lot 7 a.m. No name. Claire read it. What do you think? I stared at the screen. Trap. Walter nodded. Probably. Claire crossed her arms. Then don't go. I looked out at the black shell of my barn, then at the text. No, not trap panic. There's a difference. Traps are confident. This felt rushed, messy, scared, and scared people leak. I went not alone. Claire stayed 200 yards back watching. Walter stayed with the truck shotgun under the seat. Old habits. The county fairgrounds were empty, dead quiet. Wind pushing trash along chain link fences. At exactly 7 o'clock, a silver Honda pulled in. Small, plain, forgettable. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, pale, exhausted eyes red, holding a file box. I knew her face, Megan Cross, Pine Ridge HOA accountant. I'd seen her signature on the assessment ledgers. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She kept glancing behind her like someone followed her, or she expected them to. She stopped 10 feet away, held the box like it weighed 100 pounds. "You, Boone," I nodded. "You're late." She almost laughed, nervous, then looked at the ground. I didn't think they'd go this far. That told me everything. I stayed quiet, let her talk. That's how confessions work. People fill silence. I thought it was paperwork, she said. Creative accounting, fake assessments, pressured legal stuff. Her voice shook, but last night she stopped, looked up at me. They burned your barn. Not a question she knew. I said, you knew they would. She shook her head hard. No, but I know who. That mattered. Claire stepped out of the shadows then. Megan jumped, almost dropped the box. I said, you said prove everything. Megan looked at Claire, then at me. I want immunity. Claire answered fast. You don't get immunity from me. Megan swallowed. But you can recommend cooperation. Claire didn't deny it. That was enough. Megan opened the box. Inside, ledgers, printouts. USB, drives, bank transfers, board meeting notes, emails, everything. I flipped through the first folder, and there it was. Redstone Holdings payments, monthly transfers to Pine Ridge Estates and Nolan Briggs, bribes, regular documented, then another folder, internal accounting, fake assessment balances generated after closing, not before. Exactly like I knew. Manufactured debt. Then Megan handed me a flash drive. Her hand was shaking. Board recordings. Claire took it. What's on it? Megan looked sick. Everything. I plugged it into my laptop in the truck. First audio file. Veronica's voice. Clear, sharp, cold. Wait until Boone closes. My stomach tightened. Then, activate the historical assessments. He'll either pay or fold. Another voice. And if he fights, Veronica answered, then Redstone buys it at auction. There it was. Full conspiracy. Not theory, not suspicion proof. Land first, debt, second pressure, third. I looked at Megan. Why now? She looked at the burned skin on my hands, then at Duke and Miller in the truck, and that's when she broke. Not dramatic, not crying, just cracked. I signed the fake ledgers, she whispered. At first I thought it was fraud. She looked toward the black smoke still rising over my ranch in the distance. But arson? Her voice dropped. They said if you didn't fold, they'd make it impossible for you to stay. That line stayed with me, not foreclosure removal. Claire looked at her. Who sent the text? Megan hesitated. Then Veronica. That changed the whole room. Sell, or next time we don't miss. Megan nodded. She wanted you scared before court. Claire closed the file box, looked at me. We just went from civil to criminal conspiracy. I stared at the evidence. Bribes, fraud, arson threats, and recorded intent. For the first time since this started, the weight shifted. Not on me, on them. Because now I wasn't just defending my land anymore. Now I was building a case. And in 4 hours, Veronica Hale was walking into court, thinking she still controlled the story. She didn't. Not anymore. County courtrooms all smell the same. Old wood, old paper, old tension. By 9:30 that morning, East Coyote County Courthouse was packed. Word had spread. Small towns leak faster than pipes. Farmers, retirees, Pine Ridge residents, county clerks. Even Deputy Mason sat in the back watching. Veronica Hale arrived in white, same as before. Sharp, controlled, like she was walking into a board meeting, not a hearing. Beside her, Nolan Briggs. Gray suit, sweating, and their attorney. Expensive, polished, smug. Claire leaned over to me. That's Daniel Mercer. You know him? She nodded. Wins ugly. I looked at Veronica. Then he's in the right room. Judge Helen Rollins entered 70s old school. No patience, good, very good. She sat, opened the file, looked over her glasses. This hearing concerns an emergency foreclosure claim by Pine Ridge Estates HOA. Mercer stood, first of course, smooth voice, confident. He laid it out clean, 12 years of unpaid assessments, legal annexation, community obligations, delinquency right to foreclose. He sounded convincing. That's the danger of paperwork. It doesn't need truth, just order. Then Claire stood, no theatrics, no raised voice. Your Honor, every major document in this case was manufactured within the last 3 weeks. That changed the room. Mercer smiled. Strong accusation. Claire held up the dead owner annexation. Harold Whitaker died in March 2013. She slid it to the judge. This annexation bears his signature from February 2014. The courtroom stirred. Mercer stepped in fast. Clerical date error. There it was, the excuse expected. Judge Rollins looked at him. Are you saying the signature is valid? Mercer straightened. We are saying minor administrative discrepancies do not invalidate long-standing assessments. Good, let him commit. Claire nodded, then looked at me. Mr. Boone, I took the stand, sworn in same old chair, same old nerves. Doesn't matter how many years you work, investigations testifying always feels like walking into weather. Claire started simple. Mr. Boone, when did you purchase the ranch? 23 days ago. Did title reveal any HOA claims? No. She introduced the title report clean, then the supplemental covenant filed 6 days later, backdated. Judge looked at Briggs, noted it. Claire walked slow layer by layer like peeling paint. Did you investigate? Yes. She introduced metadata logs, upload records, Briggs's credentials. Mercer objected. Foundation. Claire smiled, called the county clerk. The young clerk from records, nervous, sweating, but truthful. He verified everything. Same upload, same day. All 43 historical files. Briggs shifted in his seat. First crack. Mercer stood. Cross-examination. Tried to rattle the clerk. Failed. Then came the brass markers. This part mattered. Claire turned on the courtroom screen. GPS video, timestamp coordinates. Walter holding lantern, original county brass markers, still buried, still seated, untouched. Mercer attacked immediately. No licensed surveyor authenticated this. Claire nodded, expected, then called Walter Griggs. 80 years old, walked slow, voice steady. He testified, I watched those markers go in back in 71. Room went silent. Mercer pressed. Memory isn't evidence. Walter smiled. No, but 40 years of fixing fence on the same line is. Even the judge almost smiled. Then Claire introduced the laser measurement, 10 feet 3 inches from original marker to Veronica's orange stake. Exact, repeatable, physical. Mercer's paper suddenly looked weaker. Then came the fire. Claire showed gas can, glove tire tracks, threatening text. Mercer objected. Speculation. Judge allowed it. Pattern evidence. That hurt. Veronica stopped smiling. Then Mercer played his hand. He stood and said, Your Honor, even if irregularities exist, Pine Ridge acted in good faith reliance on county records. That was the defense. Blame Briggs. Separate Veronica. Smart, but incomplete. Claire looked at me. My turn. I pulled out my phone. Her eyes narrowed. Mercer frowned. What's that? Claire answered. Recorded call, 72 hours before hearing. Mercer objected instantly. Consent. Claire smiled. Colorado is a one-party consent state. Overruled. The recording played. Veronica's voice clear, cold. 200,000. Walk away. Judge Rollins looked up. Mercer stiffened. Then my voice. You're offering me less than the debt you claim I owe. Silence. Then Veronica. That depends how expensive tomorrow gets. The room changed. That wasn't debt collection. That was coercion. Mercer looked at Veronica. She looked straight ahead. No smile now. Then Claire delivered the kill shot. Megan Cross. She entered shaking, sworn in, then opened the box. Ledgers, payments, emails, and the flash drive. Board meeting audio. Mercer objected. Desperate now. Judge allowed. The recording played. Veronica's voice. Wait until Boone closes, then activate the historical assessments. He'll either pay or fold. Another board member, and if he fights Veronica, then Redstone buys it at auction. Silence. Total silence. Then Claire introduced Redstone Holdings ownership shell company, tracing back to Veronica's brother. That hit like a hammer. Mercer sat down. Didn't even object. Briggs looked pale. Veronica finally stood. Your Honor. Judge Rollins slammed the gavel. Sit down. Veronica sat. Judge looked at Briggs. Did you backdate public records? No answer. Did you approve fraudulent annexation documents? Still nothing. Then Judge Rollins said the words that changed everything. I am referring this matter immediately for criminal fraud investigation. The courtroom erupted. Then 2 men stood from the back, state investigators, not county. Claire had called them after the fire. They walked straight to Briggs, cuffed him first, then Veronica. She turned toward me, pure hate, no mask left. You have no idea what you've done. I looked at her calm. I just put the truth back where it belongs. They walked her out. Mercer stayed seated, didn't even look at her. Judge froze the foreclosure void immediate. Ordered full audit of Pine Ridge. Ordered Redstone Holdings investigated. Ordered county land records reviewed. By noon, it was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters had already gathered. Walter stood beside me, Claire too. Duke and Miller in the truck bandaged alive. Walter smiled. Told you dirt remembers. I look back at the courthouse, at the people at the land waiting for me, and for the first time since that red envelope showed up in my mailbox, I felt like it was mine again. 3 months later, Pine Ridge Estates dissolved. 37 homeowners sued. Briggs took a plea. Mercer disappeared. Veronica got indicted on fraud conspiracy. Arson attempted murder extortion. Redstone collapsed. Phase 4 died. The creek stayed mine. The road stayed mine. And where my barn once stood, I built something better. Steel stone, fireproof, stronger. Same footprint, same ground, same truth. Because that's the thing about land. Paper can lie, people can lie, but dirt remembers everything. And if you're patient enough, it always tells the truth.